We're on. We've made it.
Beautiful. Good day.
Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning to me. Good after you.
Good. Yeah. So we've upgraded LiveStream, and we're already kind of learning new things. Is where we are, Donna, right?
Yes, a whole world to play.
Yeah. So welcome everybody who has come to join us again today, Lee and Donna. So we're calling these the LiveStream series now. Donna and Lee doing our live stream series. There are going to be other series that we also do from Change Innovators. So and Donna and I kind of get together and we pick subjects and we discuss them. Today we're going to have a look at humour and playfulness, right?
You bet. We're not being very playful right now, so we better jump into it. Oh my goodness. Give me a second. I got something on my desk too. Yeah, baby. I got mine.
What do you mean? Hang on a minute. There's a sheep that's coming in as well, Donna.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Right, so
my funniest one is my, not very professional because I'm leaning into my thing, but that's okay, is my Buddha to remind me not to talk so much.
Okay. I don't know.
Very nice.
Right. Okay.
Is that who's going to speak for you? You're going to be a ventriloquist this morning? Very good. You're not very good ventriloquist. Don't quit your J, as my mom would say. So it is easier for some people to laugh than others, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe that is true. This was partly prompted by two things really. One was that a while ago now I did a bit of research that was published into the practical use of serious humour. And somebody after, I think we published it in 22, we made a little podcast, my friend Arthur Turner and I, who is still doing some research, and somebody got in touch with me and said, oh, I've just heard that, it was amazing, and I've played it to my students, and are you doing any more work? And I thought, oh, that's really cool, it's been out there for a while, and somebody liked it, which is always good. And that was one thing. So I thought, well, let's do it again. And secondly is that so much of the work that we do involves playing and being humorous and being serious. And, we use a lot of neuroscience, and we talk about the brain and the nervous system a lot in the work that we do. So it seemed like a good idea to have a conversation about that and kind of let the worlds collide. Yeah, that's what we were thinking. Sorry, not what I was thinking.
Well, even what you consider, right? So you said, if I could use that comment, but somebody liked it, so that concept of somebody in the office enjoyed something that, they created laughter. But for someone else, it could actually create a very different part. And that might be a little more talking, going to the brain science of things, but they do say that when we do laugh, we relax.
Yep.
And when we relax, we know for certain that we're able to see things different, right? Do you know what I mean? Like when you're stressed and you need to make dinner, you're like, oh, there's nothing. But when you're not stressed, you can actually sit there and say like, oh, what's my options? And even this morning before we started, I have to make breakfast. I'm like, this morning we're going to have breakfast pizza, right? We're going to put the egg and all that on. And so I thought that's very apropos for what we're talking about today, right? That ability for me to say, oh, I'm like, laughter is enjoying something, having fun. And it's very different. It's different for different people. Cooking brings me joy and laughter. It may not be outright laughter, but it relaxes me, and it creates my brain to go into a space where I can get really creative. So to start the morning off like that, and then to bring that into work, for me is really healthy versus stress of what am I doing, then bringing that into work. Because each one of us, before we step into that first email, that first message, or the first call, we bring with us so much stuff. So if there can be a little bit of humor, laughter, I put laughter and play together. So play for cooking to me, I believe, and the research shows that it does a lot to the way we show up together and how we choose to be, right?
Yep, absolutely. And humor is an interesting topik for many reasons. Yeah, I'm not sure, Donna, how it sits alongside the word professional. that is sometimes used in business, is having fun, professional behavior. It's partly what prompted me to do the work in the first place, because I have a lot of fun, and I used a lot of humor in my work in life, sometimes probably inappropriately. So I guess one of the things that we could consider is define, not that I'm a big definer of things, but what do we mean when we're talking about humor? You've just talked about it, about it invoking a kind of lightness in you.
Right, but the research shows, since we're both academics a little bit, we won't, but the research actually shows that fun is very ambiguous. It's one of those things that's actually very difficult to define, which can make this topic of how we bring it into the workplace, right? So I was just reading a note. So when I was just looking at, humor and playfulness, right? It's about, it's be more about what does it feel like? I know, because we talk about, it's not obviously that human phenomenon sometimes is the observable. So this playfulness and humor may not always be observable. It's observable, yes, but it's also a feeling. And I know that in your ontological coaching, maybe you could talk about how it's a feeling.
Okay, that's a really good observation, that you don't necessarily observe humor happening. But you can experience humor happening from the inside out. That's another little topic that I might have to go away and ponder. So it's an embodied thing. When you hear something that you find humorous, you have a whole body reaction. Laughing isn't just something that happens here. It happens
inside.
It happens inside. And it's, if you've ever experienced falling off your chair laughing, afterwards you can feel a little bit exhausted.
Right. And does that happen every day? Does that happen every day for people?
Well, I think for some people it might do.
That's fair.
But at the same time, it's an exhilarating experience when you're laughing. And one of the things that we, I just want to go back a little bit. Let's just rewind a little bit.
I didn't mean to.
No. It's really important for me to pick up on some of the things that you said. But it does allow us to reframe things. Okay. So in the research that I did some time ago, there was this concept that we uncovered that human beings in particular have this innate ability to be playful and laugh. Lots of animals have it as well. But human beings have got this innate ability, and it's possible that it is the thing that has allowed us or enabled us, because evolution has selected it almost as as something that we can do, that has allowed us to evolve. Because the thing that's interesting about humor is that you put two things side by side that shouldn't fit side by side, and then it brings a whole new meaning to it. So the punchline of a joke, for example, is often bringing two things together that you weren't expecting, that generate a laugh response. Okay. Does that make sense? So in a survival term, sometimes and humor can be quite edgy. You can look at some very dark things in humor that enable it to be more acceptable, more palatable, and it can shift your perspective on something quite considerably if you can use it effectively, which is what was behind the idea about trying to understand the use of humor and playfulness in coaching psychology and coaching practice, because often people are, including coaches, coming into those arrangements trying to sort of find their way through things, and therefore humor, I think, is possibly a way for us to be able to accelerate things. And I'll maybe go into that a little bit more. But what you've done is you've also kind of said, but it's kind of part of life. When we're coaching ourselves, it doesn't have to be in a formal coaching arrangement, but when we're coaching ourselves, recognizing the things that make us feel good, and using that really intentionally, whether it's making breakfast pizza or whatever else it is, there's an element of fun in that. and it has a deep physiological effect. One of the effects it has is to help people to be more relaxed, to be more creative, to be able to, resolve conflict almost quicker than they might otherwise do, because you're in a situation where you're using humor to your advantage. Okay,
right. So
yeah.
that humor can sometimes be a struggle, because sometimes we think of like pokes at people in the office, right? Humor,
Absolutely.
but we're not, we're not talking about, I mean, it is one of the things when you start looking up the idea of humor, is some of that humor from that perspective. But that ability for us to understand, maybe you and I are using that word of humor and playfulness interchangeably, potentially.
Possibly.
Possibly, that's right. But for different people, that even that ability to be playfulness of, sitting around at a meeting and someone's brought breakfast in or brought something in, and that playfulness of being able to enjoy that few moments or that time before the meeting is supposed to start. It's supposed to start at 9, but someone's decided to bring breakfast in unknown. And if you have the ability to just be playful with that space, and not be stern that we're late, that is a form of playfulness in a group. Because that's, if we are stern, we're not catching, we're not able to maybe pick up other nuances. Like we can't, as we talk about in our program, you may not be able to sort of sense things or feel things, right? Your intuition, that can all be sort of be off, right? That ability for us to sort of think about, like, what makes us laugh during the day? Is it listening to a song with some lyrics that reminds you of somewhere that you were, I mean, that's the reason music in a workspace is quite nice. I find it really interesting right now that so many places you go and there's no music, because everybody's got it on their ears. When I go to the gym in the morning, it's like, I don't listen to I listen to the music around me. So it's a very dynamic space to think about a song that comes on, it makes me smile. And like no one else is listening to it in the place except for me. So it's like you're having your own laugh or your own memory, and laughter and memories probably hold their will go down. But that real space about understanding that allows us to reframe and even forget, like, I'm exhausted at the gym or in a meeting. Oh, this is a big project to take on. A little bit of laughter can sort of make us see that there's a path out of it. I have a new way of my brain actually maybe making some new pathways, so that I can actually see there's a potential to do something different.
Yeah. And what I loved about your example being at the gym, it is a little bit like the punchline of a joke, that you're there, okay, and you're jogging, whatever you're doing. Let's just say you're jogging away and whatever, and you're listening to this music, and it's making you feel a particular way, and then you turn around and you realize that you're the only person listening to the music.
I realize that.
It's like that punchline of a joke. It's like, wow, isn't this an amazing environment? But I'm the only person in it, because actually everyone else is locked away in their own little world.
Yeah.
With their little music going in their ear. Yeah.
Does your elf have a name?
I don't know. I haven't really. I think he may be one of the elves that worked with
Santa. Snow White.
Maybe work with Snow White. I don't know. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it. What I do like is that he's actually pretty happy, and is adding to the scenario. So one of the things, just to kind of be a bit impromptu about it as well, I wonder what the elf would think about the conversation that we're having right now, and what's important from the perspective of this little elf. Now, I have a huge amount of thanks to give out to Arthur Turner, my friend who I co-write with, okay, because he's also written some amazing papers about creativity and coaching using puppets, and it's well worth having a look at.
For sure. Just so people know, they can search. You can search Lee's name online, and you can look up playful, play and humor, and it's very easy for you to find his article. So I would suggest, if you're interested, just to kind of have a peruse through that. So, but the thing to think about is that imaginary. We're talking about people in their workplace, right? If we talk about why this topic's important of play, it's to relax. It's to create space where we can think differently. It's to enjoy our day, because when we have joy, we show up differently. We know that in our EQ, when we do the EQ profiles in our program, there's components that talk about happiness. And there's the thing that's fascinating about that program is that there's never once in that mechanism, that tool, that defines those answers to those questions. And that's what's really interesting, is that ambiguity and play go together. And it's also that space to realize that as you're answering these questions, it's your interpretation of it. And so even at work, if I'm having a good time at work, even though maybe it's year end, it's month end, if there's things that I'm enjoying and playful, that changes my way of being. And I know that for you is a big part of it. Why don't we talk about the brain science a bit, about humor? Why don't we dive more into that?
Okay. So one of the things that we think we discovered is that meditation and laughter produce a similar effect on the body. So one of the things that happens is that you, and I'm not trying to pretend that I'm a scientist or anything. I'm not. I drew from other people's knowledge and things, and from the work that we also use and bring into our work around heart math and the kind of science of well-being, which is a critical part, I think, of leadership work. It is that it produces gamma waves. So the gamma waves are produced in the brain, and they affect the whole of your brain. They help you to become more focused. Okay, so one of the studies that we looked at says that if you people that do what you might call relatively monotonous work, if you don't particularly enjoy what you're doing, or it's fairly regular, or you do enjoy what you're doing, 15 minutes of meditation, or 15 minutes of finding a way to get your brain going through using meditation or laughter can really, really significantly improve productivity. And that can be and in many ways, Donna, that can be taking time out to sit and enjoy a lovely lunch that you've made for yourself, okay, being mindful about that. Or it can be watching your favorite funny clip on YouTube or something like that, actually to stimulate, or having a conversation with a friend that you find really, really stimulating and helpful, is huge when it comes to improving well-being and healthy productivity. Yeah. And the brain is something that we understand communicates not just with itself, but it communicates with the whole of your body. So if you are having a humorous experience within your body, that is stimulating your brain to also be in a more focused, more alert state, but in a good way. Yeah. The studies that we found showed that just doing that 2 or 3 times a day can significantly enhance your working day, to enjoy yourself. And I think the point that you're making, I think, is that that's different for everybody in terms of what that might mean. And part of what we're discussing is how do we, and we always say this in our work, how do we make allowance for people to be who they are and enjoy what they do at work, as opposed to us saying, hang on a minute, what do you mean you're bringing your breakfast into the meeting? I don't allow that sort of thing. Well, actually, what you might be doing in that is imposing a value that is fundamentally making it very, very difficult for the other person to engage in the meeting or enjoy their day, because you're bringing your own worldview to bear. And what we want people to do is to approach these things with more curiosity, because my perspective on humor, or my perspective on what it means to be professional, might be very, very different and equally as legitimate as yours.
Yeah, it's there's lots of different points in that, right, that we could go off in different ways. The thing that comes to mind when you say, like, how do you bring yourself to work? I never really grew up in a house where there's lots of slapstick humor.
Right.
Like we didn't reference movies or things like that. It's not actually something that I have in my pot of soup. Yeah. So, you know what I mean? I didn't really grow up in a space like that. So, you know, when people are making jokes like that or doing, I really love when friends do those things. I love being around other people. I like to be playful and I like to have fun, but I don't know if in my toolkit I naturally possess that. Like I
Right.
need to be around places that I don't like, you know, when you start thinking about what allows you to be playful and to bring humor, you know, they talk about the brain where I don't feel pressure to do it. Like it's a must. You know, things that aren't going to trigger you, where what I'm expecting in the reality to be somewhat the same. So I'm not feeling threatened. Right. So when you start to think about even play and humor, even though maybe people don't have it in their pot of soup, like it's not really something I have in my pot of soup, but I love it around others. When those really good places are where I can be me and you can be you, then maybe, like, I wonder from a brain science perspective, then if we're actually able to step more into being just naturally playful, even if it's not in our pot of soup, like we talk about in our program.
Yeah. And that's, so just going back to what you said, what's going to happen for me then is, you know, the EQ 2.0 that we use as a psychometric, there are aspects of that which, I mean, at one level, Donna, I find it kind of ludicrous that you can take all of the beauty and complexity of a human being and saying, right, there's these 5 areas and these 3 components which are your makeup of your emotional intelligence. However, there's an elegance to it as well, which actually really helps people to understand where they've exercised certain emotional muscles that they're really good at exercising, and then there's other areas where they just overlook it, or they've never even thought about it. And what I think you're articulating is how that manifests through people's life experiences. You know, some people may be you know, acutely you know, really adept at certain things in their emotional pot of soup and completely unaware of something else. And then you meet somebody who's exactly the opposite to that. And that's really interesting, yeah, because then what you've got is 2 people who emotionally, their makeup is totally different. And you could never know that about another person just by seeing them, okay? Yeah. And what we're saying is that for potentially, at least, what we're saying, I sound like I know what I'm talking about here, but the potential of what we're saying is that being playful is another route into enhancing your emotional intelligence, because you look at it in a more playful way. And the one thing I also want to just say to you, just to see what happens when I do, is that when you play, nothing can go wrong.
Right. Because, yeah, and if you go back to some other research, you know, we start talking about, we come from one perspective, which is we do plan A, B, and C. But when you actually go into some of the other research about doing experiments, and experiments is, and you put it in that bundle of, you said, of making it fun, you know, someone's made a mistake, they can make mistakes here. So what if we change that and we do experiments here? Yeah. Why don't we experiment as a group to see how this goes? When we do an experiment, we know there's going to be things that go on. That was successful, that, you know, that didn't do what we expected. Even that word, if I let people fail at work, fail means then we automatically know what the answer is potentially, whereas an experiment and something being fun is very fluid and dynamic. And we do know that that's an important component of EQ, of your EQ as well.
Yeah. And people with high IQ, Dawn, sometimes have never, through some of the ways that they've experienced life through the school systems and stuff, they've never experienced failure in a way. Do you know what I mean by that? You know, they maybe
even in sports, even in sport world, some individuals, they you know, they're so used to making like the certain team, or they're so academic and sometimes in that sports arena, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then you know, the emotional side of things, which is EQ is a newer science in many ways. When you find out about some of these things, it can be quite hard. It can be quite painful for people to accept that maybe they're not very good at certain things, or
you know what, I will admit that I like to look at it like that is your pot of soup. It is who you are, and part of self-regard is just understanding who you are, like, you know, the strengths and the warts, I like to refer. It's not, for me, an EQ is never good or bad. It is like, how has that allowed you to be who you are? Yeah. Like, how come those are? How come they show up? if you want to, what's in that positive, and sometimes a little bit of humor and meditation and reflection is really important. If one of the things to think about, that when we start to think about how we make practical use of this, is as a leader, is to just that awareness potentially, that playfulness and humor is very different. If you sit there and say, we are a culture where there's play and these are the 10 things we do, those 10 things could be for certain people, yourself, but those 10 things may not be playful and humorous, and create a space of where their brain can really become free for others.
Yep.
And so the things that might be playful might be the fact that you get together and you're standing around before you go into a meeting, and that playfulness of conversation is playful. But maybe you never put that in your culture chart. Does that make, like, you've never stopped there and said, like, but sometimes just that small talk before going into something, for me as an extrovert and who loves to connect, that to me is playtime.
Yep.
But maybe, I don't know how many people actually consider that. Why do I want to get there 10 minutes early? Why do I want to get there? Why do I want to do that? What's the point of sitting around the airport? Well, that's actually playtime sometimes. That adds so much joy and laughter and human connection for me, that kind of goes in that bundle for me. Not saying for you, but that bundle of playtime.
Yeah. It's interesting as well. You reminded me that part of the research when I was doing it and still used was a speech that John Cleese did quite a while ago. And he talks about being in an open mode and being in a closed mode. And open is this humor, this creativity that, if you think back and think about Monty Python at certain stages was utterly ludicrous. When they went to the Ministry of Funny Walks, or the scene where, hello, yes, I'd like to have a really good argument, please. And the guy saying, well, no, you don't. Well, actually, I do. And there's a universal kind of, not, it was maybe for everybody, it was ahead of its time, but in that ludicrousness comes real insight. So sometimes, if you imagine, so we're thinking about something, obviously this one might not be practical, but if you put yourself into an open mode, you could approach a problem and say to a team, let's do this in a way that is going to make it almost impossible to solve the problem. Yeah, let's figure out what the worst behavior might be, or the worst this might be, and then let's do it in the style of Monty Python, whatever. And it's incredible how through creative processes like that you can come to new insights. And most people probably wouldn't be comfortable with that because it might feel unprofessional, or some of the other attachments that people might add to it. And there does come a time when you have to say, right, okay, well, now we need to kind of put that creativity back in the box, and we might have to go and do something. But let's try and use these ideas about if we accept that creativity and focus and well-being is enhanced by play and humor done well, if you like, because it can also be harmful, I think, which is the point that you were making. We need to be mindful of that. That it can really accelerate learning. It can really accelerate us towards new possibilities, and that's why I also decided to research it in relation to coaching.
So in coaching, what there's two things. I mean, this topic I find, I've not because I can tell a joke at all. That's not how I would generally show up in a group. But the idea of it is, first of all, we know that from it's not a new thing. We know that for adults to learn new things, you take them to a spot that's kind of bigger than what, something to get them to think about and experience and explore. And then we bring them maybe into the space of, okay, like getting them then into thinking about what we need to think about, because their creativity, their brain is expanded, right? Their personal views on a topic or looking at, and having some fun with it is such an important part of when we start the thing. I forgot my second point. As my mom would say, it must not have been true. So yeah, just that space of, can't remember it.
What was that?
Oh, okay. What does the L say? Yes. What does the L say?
Yeah,
so
that was quite funny. That was funny.
But just thinking about that whole dynamics about, like, there's been real research into doing play, but maybe we haven't categorized it that. So when we think about this topic, it's always that idea, like, how are you already doing this?
Absolutely.
And when we can see that we're already doing it, it's often easier to build. And in coaching, I like to use cards sometimes. I have a bunch of cards, and it allows people to start telling stories, or you're bringing up things that takes them to a place where they have good memories and they can laugh, or they see a picture and it's irony. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, this one says balance and the boat's on its side. It's point of view cards, just so I give credit to where they come from. And the idea of it is, people go, that can't even be, that doesn't even exist. And then they don't realize that they're having this moment inside, this feeling inside of them, where they're having like this, not a laughter outside, but they're having like having a moment of playfulness in their brain, right? With the words and an image. And so in coaching, I use imagery and pictures to start those types of conversations with people. And I also bring them into the work that we do in our programs as well.
Yeah. Boy, we could probably keep going. But we probably do a part 2 on this one. we may do a part 2. Absolutely.
Yes. We just want to thank you. We do. You can always, Lee and I are both coaches. We love to coach, professional coaches. We both work together in 2 different continents. But for both of us, we feel like we are very much in one world. So if you want to check out some of the program offerings that we do, or think continuing these conversations, just reach out to us. We do have a new program starting in April, the end of April, on April 29th. So we would love to hear from you. So if you're interested in learning more about it. Final thoughts you'd like to say, Lee? Something about your research that would be a nice closing?
It was fun to do.
I hope so.
It was great fun.
I don't think 100%. I don't think I wrote about paper. I don't think it's 100% fun. But if at the end of the day, if we wrap it in a bow that it was fun, then that's a great sign of success, right?
It has good memories. And the thing about humor and playfulness is that we attach good memories to it, so it can help to evoke things. If you can say, "Oh, do you remember when?" And it's a form of bringing people together, and it's about connecting yourself back to who you are. So I'm a big advocate of it, and I know you are too.
Yeah, and just food for thought for those that are interested. I think Lee and I will write a piece on why he has that elf and why I have my plane, and we will put that on LinkedIn, and we will share the reason. I believe there's a reason. I'm confident in that. There's a reason why those are things that sit on our desk, and totally related to the topic today of playfulness and humor, laughter, and reframing. So just remember, fun is ambiguous. And it's also something that's been with us from the beginning of time. It's not a new thing. It's actually something animals do as well. So have a great day. Thank you very much for being here. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Ciao.
Bye.